Evening, folks. Welcome back to Wilderness Wargaming. We're going to have Military Tuesdays today because I forgot that you have to record videos on Sunday to have Military Mondays. But what we're going to take a look at today is the Battle of Hoth in Empire Strikes Back. Go for a little bit more fictional military events here. Every once in a while, you run across some military stuff in fiction that actually comes across as kind of how we would expect things to go, particularly with a futuristic setting. Now, of course, they have all kind of capabilities and things going on that we don't in real life, so we don't know exactly how they would work. But we can take some guesses. So let's take a look.
Washington will stay behind to fly the speeders. As soon as each transport is loaded, evacuation control will give clearance for immediate launch.
Right, sir.
All right, so this guy's giving out the plan. He's explaining who's going to stay back to cover the ground force and how the plan's going to go to evacuate. So this is good. He's probably a higher ranking officer, and he's given orders to two maybe subordinates, lieutenants or junior captains, something like that, who's figuring out what's going to be next. Okay, we're gonna go skip ahead here. We're not going to talk about the main characters too much because we've all seen this before.
General, there's a fleet of Star Destroyers coming out of hyperspace in Sector 4.
Reroute all power to the energy shield. Gotta hold them till all transports are away. Prepare for ground assault.
Okay, so the general there, what he's doing, he's getting information there. He's got like a combat information center, tactical operations center, whatever you want to call it. What he's got to work with, he's got a limited ground force. He has some air support in the form of snow speeders that he can use. He's got an energy shield, which, as we'll see, I believe in a second, if I remember how things go exactly, the Star Destroyers, even with their incredibly high level of firepower, a Star Destroyer can, given sufficient time, completely eradicate all life on an Earth-sized planet. And they have a Super Star Destroyer here. But energy shields are very, very effective. So, despite that, this energy shield can withstand any bombardment that the Star Destroyers can give out. Now, that could just mean any practical bombardment. It's possible that given weeks and weeks, maybe it would collapse, but everybody's on a tight timeline here. So he's thinking about what he's got to work with. And because he knows that, he also knows that the Imperials have ground troops aboard their ships, and that they can get underneath the shield by landing outside of it and then coming at it with walkers on the ground, which, of course, we all know that's exactly what they're going to do. But the general there, he's doing a good job of making an assessment of what he's doing. He's understanding what his objective is, what he can and can't accomplish, and he's prioritizing his needs based on the criteria. There's not enough time here to go through a complex orders process. What he's doing is he's reaching a decision point, and he's making a call based on the available facts. So let's move ahead here. And I think we were all familiar with the scene.
Comscan has detected an energy field protecting an area of the 6th planet of the Hoth system. The field is strong enough to deflect any bombardment.
The rebels are alerted to our presence. Admiral Oswald came out of light speed too close to the system.
He felt surprise was wiser.
He is as clumsy as he is stupid. General, prepare your troops for a surface attack.
Yes, my lord.
Okay, so he's speaking there to General Veers, who is the commander of the ground forces aboard the Imperial Star Destroyer. So like their Marines or whatever the Stormtroopers are considered aboard the... He's going to take charge of the surface assault. Darth Vader is upset at Admiral Oswald. We've always heard that. He came out of light speed too close to the system. And they were detected. Now, we don't know a whole lot about how sensors work in Star Wars, how they operate. But probably there is some kind of sensor that works on some kind of faster-than-light propulsion technology. We do know that they can communicate back and forth between star systems faster than light, because we see those hologram communicators in some of the movies. I think Vader talks to the Emperor on one of these. I don't think we're at that point yet in the movie. I forgot. But we've seen them work. We obviously know that they can fly at very, very high superluminal speeds, faster than light between star systems. Be there sometimes within hours. So probably there's some kind of sensor. Now, if you had a sensor like we use today to look out at the solar system, a passive system like a telescope or some kind of infrared system would receive information coming in, but it only comes in at the speed of light because all those things travel to us at the speed of light. we know that radar would go out and come back in more active form. It would actually take twice as long because the signal has to travel all the way out and come all the way back. So while that seems to be instantaneous here on Earth, it would take, even just for a radar signal to get to the moon and back, would take approximately 3 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. Over the long distances out to the edge of a solar system and back, it would take hours at best, I think. I'd have to sit down and do the math, I'm not sure. But long enough that you wouldn't get true real-time tracking of what's going on. But the rebels detected the Imperials immediately when they came out, and that's why Vader is upset. Now, he said they came out at light speed too close to the system. If they came out farther away, you would kind of intuitively think that would give the rebels longer to pick them up. But probably what happens is when they come out of light speed, some sort of signature as they transition between hyperspace and real space is generated, and that's what the rebels are able to pick up. And it would make sense that that would be detected at faster than light speeds because hyperspace is faster than light. Okay, so he's displeased with Admiral Ozzel, and that means pretty much the end of Admiral Ozzel. So now let's move forward to the defense of Hoth. So here we have Luke and his backseater. I think his name is Dak, and they're getting ready to take off in their speeder.
All troop carriers will assemble at the north entrance. The heavy transport ships will leave as soon as they're loaded. Only 2 fighter escorts per ship. The energy shield can only be opened for a short time, so you'll have to stay very close to your transports.
2 fighters against a Star Destroyer?
The ion cannon will fire several shots to make sure that any enemy ships will be out of your flight path. When you've gotten past the energy shield, proceed directly to the rendezvous point. Understood? Yeah. Good luck.
Okay, so apparently Princess Leia, now I don't think this is just Princess Leia given the briefing because she's a main character. Evidently, she has work to do around the complex other than just being important. So she's probably being put to work by the general, doing things like briefing the fighter crews on how the evacuation plan is going to go. So we see the transports when they leave. They're those long kind of ovular ships, and we all know what an X-wing fighter looks like. So she's telling them this is the scheme. We're going to open the shield. You're gonna come out with the transport. You got to stay real close because it's only going to be open for a second, and it's going to slam shut behind you. And then of course she's looking closely. You can see she's a good briefer. She's giving everybody, looking them in the eye. She's speaking firmly. She's making it very clear exactly how things are going to happen, what they're going to need to do from beginning to end in steps. And it's all very easy to understand. Now, one of the pilots brings up an important point. You know, two X-wing fighters are not going to be a match for a Star Destroyer. I mean, heck, the Star Destroyer contains something like 72 TIE fighters normally, so just that alone would be overwhelming for 2 X-wings to deal with. And then she points out, okay, we've thought of that. We have this ion cannon that's gonna fire some blasts and clear a path for you to get out of there. Now, the reason that this is realistic is what she's doing is she's giving them a briefing, but she's also integrating arms into that. The fighters, the spacecraft are going to be supported by their major defensive asset on the ground, which is this ion cannon, which is suitable for engaging ships in orbit. And let's see here. Okay, now we have the infantry setting up their defense outside. Okay, now, actually, there we go. Okay, now, you've got a lot of infantry here. They've got prepared defensive positions. They've got trenches dug here in the snow. They've got suitable gear for the weather, which is good. And fortunately for them, it's sunny out, so it won't be as cold as it could be. And they've got some weapons that are suitable for dealing with larger targets, although rifles are not going to help them a lot against AT-ATs. Now, we all know how the movie goes. Even their larger weapons. Now, this kind of defensive fixed turret here is, if I recall right from Star Wars lore, actually a high rate of fire anti-infantry weapon, so it's not going to be of much use. This thing here, I think this is more like a laser kind of a recoilless rifle, or maybe like a javelin launcher, so it's a light anti-armor weapon, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's also that, let me see if I can find it real quick here. We'll see it, that radar dish-looking weapon. Now, that one's supposed to be an anti-armor one. Now, we all know, of course, that these are very ineffective because the AT-AT is so heavily armored that it can absorb all of this firepower. Okay, but now we can also tell that they haven't had a whole lot of time to prepare this defense, probably because they haven't been on Hoth that long. And they got a lot of loose equipment laying around all over the place. They got tubes going all over. It's not quite clear what those are for. But at least they have some cover there in the snow to try to fight the defense. Now, I do think, given that they kind of knew what they were going to be facing, what weapons they had, I think that what they probably should have done was not even bothered with the speeders. And what they should have done was stayed indoors, basically in the underground sections, and basically fought inside against the stormtroopers, where a lot of these weapons would be more effective. Now, stationary weapons like this that look like they're almost built into the ground, I'm not sure how portable this thing is, if it's how it's installed in the snow, if it was dropped off of some transport and just sits there, or the dish weapon. These are not great. This is something in sci-fi that you see all the time, are these fixed guns that look like almost like coastal artillery from the real world, where they're just anchored to the ground, they don't move, and they shoot. Even in the 21st century, these kinds of weapons are not good. In Ukraine, anything that's fixed like that is, especially if it's clear near the front lines, is going to get killed by drones or something like that. Now, we never see those things in Star Wars because that's kind of what people would expect to see. They didn't have drones at the time the movie was being made, stuff like that. But they're a little bit primitive even for the late 1970s, early 1980s when these movies came out. You didn't see fixed gun emplacements really anymore. Those things went out of style pretty much with the start of World War II, and it's kind of something that is really not all that great, even in Star Wars. Now, if it's on some kind of grav carrier where it can actually be moved around, it's relatively portable, that you can make a little bit more case for, because we still do have things like towed anti-tank guns or towed howitzers in the real world, but really fixed emplacements are just not that appropriate for sci-fi, and I've never been a big fan of things like that. Okay, so we're going to move on here, and we're going to watch this little sequence. They're getting ready for the war.
Primary target will be the power generators. Prepare to open shield.
Okay, the general's identifying how they're going to fight. Open the shield, getting ready to open the shield. He's still got a lot of work to do.
Rebel ships are coming into our sector. Good. Our first
He has to manage two different battles at once, basically.
Stand by, ion control. Fire.
The first transport is away. The first transport is away.
Okay, so we got a lot going on there in that sequence. First, you got the general. He's trying to manage two things at once. He's got a ground battle to manage, and he's also got to manage this evacuation fight that's going on in space. We've got separation of duties there in the TOC. They've got somebody who's responsible for managing the ion control, telling them to stand by and then fire. Presumably, there's some sort of targeting system where they're able to see where the Star Destroyers are. Now, I'm not quite sure how the Star Destroyers are arranged in space exactly, but the ion cannon, obviously, because it's on a planet and shooting up, it only has a limited field of fire, probably. It can only cover so many degrees of sky, and that's kind of the best avenue for the transports and the X-Wings to go out of. But once they do, the first ones go, the Empire's going to know where they came out. But they get out there. Now, what an ion cannon does in the Star Wars lore, if you're not already familiar, is it's not the same as the laser cannons that most of the ships are armed with. An ion cannon does is it has like an electrical effect, and it can paralyze and disable a ship's systems by overloading them. And I'm not sure why they're not used more often. Star Destroyers do have very strong shields. despite the mystique that those octagonal-looking ball things on the thing are not actually the shield generators. They do that in every video game and all that. And it's like, why is the Star Destroyer the only ship in the entire series that have its shield generators outside the shields for some reason? No, that's not what's going on. But ion cannons seem to go right through the shields every time, regardless of what the target is. So I don't know why they're not more used. Because if you disable your opponent, I mean, before you, then you can blow up with your laser cannons. I don't know why that doesn't happen more often. I've never really run across a good explanation. They did, however, they coordinated it very well. They obviously have very, very tight fire control and good coordination, because they sent those ion blasts right past that transport. It passed really close, and it was right on target and got there just as they needed it. So that was very good coordination, communication all the way around. It's not clear if they ever practiced this, but either way, there was a high degree of effectiveness there. Now, then the last thing is, of course, they announce it to everybody, because everybody's stressing out because you're about to get attacked by Imperial walkers on the ground, and we have to get out of here, and nobody wants to be left holding the bag when the Imperials get there. So when you see when they have the first one out, they give everybody a morale boost by letting them know what's happening. All right, now they're bringing out their speeders, and here come the walkers. Now the walkers are opening up.
Echo Station 5-7, we're on our way.
Okay, now the walkers have heavier guns. They seem to have longer range for the most part than the rebels' weapons, because they didn't open fire to this point. Now, one thing I've never quite understood, because they do still have fighters back, because we know Luke gets in an X-Wing later and flies away, why they didn't use the X-Wings. As we saw in Rogue One, X-Wings are very, very effective against walkers, whereas the speeders don't have guns. Although there are a lot of them.
Now. Luke, I have no approach vector. I'm not set. Steady, Dak.
Okay, now that I don't know what that he's talking about there. We don't have an approach vector. I mean, you can see the target. An approach vector would be basically the distance and speed, or direction and speed, that you're traveling towards the enemy. So, and you're not the pilot either, Dak. You're flying in the back seat. What are you talking about? You're not set. You don't have an approach vector. I don't know what he's on about. All right, so we'll go ahead here.
Attack pattern Delta. Go now. All right, coming in. Javi, you still with me?
Okay, so that's not particularly effective. Now, Luke also was remarkably inaccurate there. He seemed to be going for the leg joint on the walker, which seems to me like it would be a good target, but the walkers can pretty much just shrug these off. Now, one thing this is sci-fi, and these are energy weapons. Star Wars has stuff with materials that are vastly stronger than anything we have here on Earth. It isn't like steel or even like tungsten carbide or anything like that. Or any of our, probably even better than our most advanced ceramics and other, hybrid types of materials that are really good. So they can just outright reject weaker energy weapons. Stronger weapons, like what the X-Wings have, they can't. But they can actually armor an armored vehicle sufficiently they can just shrug off air support. Now, could this happen in real life? Well, most of the time when we think of some kind of anti-tank aircraft, we think of like the A-10. And no, a tank is probably not going to be shrugging off its main gun or any of its missiles. Now, could a modern battle tank shrug off the machine gun fire, say, from a World War II fighter? Yeah. And if we think of these things are actually, turns out the speeders in the lore are actually not combat craft. They are not spacecraft. They're not combat craft. They are refitted some kind of anti-gravity cargo tug, which is why they have that nice handy-dandy harpoon in the back that they use to knock the walkers down. So that would make them a more primitive option compared to using the X-Wings, which, again, I don't understand why they didn't do that. So let's move forward a little bit here. Okay, they're still trying. Actually, looks like he survived the battle. General Veers does not
That
look
armor's
even
too strong
slightly
for
nervous
blasters.
about that. Okay, yes, Luke, we know it's too strong for blasters. Probably should have known before you even went out there. We'll move forward again a little bit more. They're using their guns. Now, that one turret that was supposed to be an anti-infantry turret in the lore, I don't know why it's firing so slowly. Some of these weapons have an absurdly low rate of fire. They're almost not even useful. And that's supposed to look like it was a more substantial blast from the radar gun looking weapon, and you can see that one wasn't effective either. So however the walkers are armored, it's very, very good at absorbing energy fire from Star Wars weapons. Okay, so now they're going for the anti-armor weapons.
Yes, Lord Vader. I've reached the main power generators. The shield will be down in moments. You may start your landing.
Okay, so General Veers realizes he's in range to take out the generators. He lets Vader know so that they can start movement up there, get their dropships or whatever ready to go. And he'll have them down before the ships get that far. Alright, so let's see here. What's next? We've all seen taking out the walker thing before. There you go. That's wet anyway, so he takes us out. Okay, now they're gonna, I don't understand why the troops are leaving the trench to go assault the walker. Once it's down, it all of a sudden becomes very vulnerable to the speeders. I don't know if there's just a weak spot there that they can more easily hit, maybe at the neck. That seems the most likely thing. But it doesn't... it seems like it's a very abrupt change in the properties of the walker. Okay. Once again, the anti-tank gun is not effective. They're going for the major weapons. Try and take those out. Let's move ahead here. Okay, Luke, of course, he has to... Now we still got at least 3 surviving big walkers here. We know that 2 died. Wedge killed one, and Luke killed one. I think they had 5 total. Okay, no, Luke's about to kill one. I think they still had one before. Okay, we've seen Luke do his thing before. He doesn't get the lead one. And they're just taking out the infantry.
17.28.
Now, the walkers seem remarkably agile in being able to respond to aircraft like that. And they seem to get better as the battle goes, which is weird. The big thing with the walkers, I've always thought, I mean, they're cool. When you're a little kid, they're amazing. But walkers like that are not really a very practical military vehicle unless you're just using for what the Empire does, which is for terror purposes, because they reject most of the El Cheapo weapons that the rebels have because they don't have the more modern stuff. And they're scary because they are however many feet tall, 50, 60 feet tall, and if they step on you, you're flat. Plus they have these long-range forward-firing guns, and they can do a ton of damage. They don't, however, seem to really have any defenses at all to the side or rear. And as a result, I don't think they would be particularly useful outside of this kind of anti-insurgency, essentially, warfare that the Empire's doing. They're also, of course, because they're a very high center of gravity, they're vulnerable to being knocked over, no matter how well armored and everything else they are. Really just not great. Now, they are a transport vehicle. And there are a zillion other vehicles in the Star Wars lore, far beyond what we see in the movies. So there's all kinds of platforms that you could use to protect them from the flanks inside. Heck, even the smaller Scout Walkers, because they don't have that long, big armored body. The Scout Walkers, the ATSTs, are far more practical. They can turn, they can maneuver more easily, and they aren't nearly as... They're more like a BattleTech mecha. Now, I mean, I can say a lot of bad things about Walkers and mecha, but I'm not going to. Because I would say that those more two-legged styles are, if you want a walker, that's probably the way to go. The four-legged ones are just kind of horrendous. And then there's also the one that's in Attack of the Clones, the AT-TE, I think it's called, where it's a much shorter and squatter one, but it also has guns facing in every direction. And I don't know why you wouldn't go with something like that. It's just a heck of a lot better defended. All right, but anyhow, we all know after this, of course, the Imperials get into the base. Han Solo loads up Leia, and they take off in the Millennium Falcon, and its hyperdrive doesn't want to work until the last second at the very end of the movie. Sorry, should have spoiler alerted. But yeah, that's militarily... Like, the Battle of Hoth has a few things in it, such as the fixed weapon emplacements, and I think maybe less than ideal tactics. I think the Rebels are actually too aggressive here overall. They're trying to defend forward, which I understand they want to protect the power generators, but they don't really have anything to do it with. And they somehow managed to put the power generators right on this wide, flat plain where the AT-ATs can get to them easily. So I don't think that their defensive plan for a ground assault was really that well thought out. But there are a lot of other good things, particularly a lot of the giving orders, the decision-making, as they're going, is very much like you'd expect from pretty well-trained people in real life. The general makes good calls. Leia gives a good, accurate, concise briefing to the fighter pilots. Communication's good. And you do see some leadership there on the ground, even with the assault and all that. So it's not nearly as unrealistic as you might think for a fictional battle. But let me know what you think. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment down below, and click the notifications bell for more great content for World War Wargaming. And we'll see you back here very soon. Bye.